Hola, chicos y chicas. In this video, we're going to look at the exciting world of indirect object pronouns. That's just a big fancy term for something that I think you'll find to be pretty easy once we get into it. Let's start with a few examples. Te regalo esta aspiradora. Le doy la zanahoria a mi esposa. Me queda bien la sudadera. Siempre les busco a mis minions. La música de Justin Bieber me da un dolor de cabeza. So after looking at those Spanish examples, let's put those sentences into English and do a quick, brief reminder lesson about how we use sentence structure in English. Take a look at the right side. Over here you can see that we have our abbreviations. S stands for the subject, the person doing the action in the sentence. The verb, which is the action in the sentence. The direct object, which is the object that is receiving the action of the verb. And then finally we have the indirect object, which is the thing that we're going to really be focusing on today. And the indirect object really refers to whom or for whom is the object. So let's look at our first sentence. I'm giving you this vacuum as a gift. The person doing it is I. The action is giving. The thing that is being given is the vacuum. And the person that it's being given to is you. So that would be our indirect object. What a great gift, a vacuum. Let's move on. This sweatshirt fits me well. The thing doing the action is the sweatshirt. It's fitting. And to whom is it fitting? Well, it's fitting me well. So that is our indirect object. Let's look at one more example here. I give the carrot to my wife. The thing that is being given is the carrot. To whom is it being given? My wife. That would be our indirect object here. Okay, so those are some English examples and a brief reminder of some things that you've likely already learned in English. And we're going to apply those things into Spanish very soon. So just a quick summary here, and you may want to pause the video so you can write these things down after I'm done speaking. But the direct object is the thing that directly receives the action of the verb. In the sentence, Senor Alberta gives homework to his students, the direct object receiving the action of giving is homework. So that's our direct object. You want to jot that down. But the main focus of today is the indirect object. And the indirect object tells us who or what receives the direct object. So who is receiving that thing that is receiving the action of the verb? This also answers the question to whom or for whom. These are very important things. Make sure you have these in your notes. This is going to help you solve a lot of indirect object problems in the near future. So in our sentence, Senor Alberta gives homework to his students. Who is receiving the homework? You have to keep that in mind. Who is receiving the direct object? Here's our direct object. Who is it for? It's for his students. Jot this down if you haven't already. So something that you're already familiar with here, these are the charts. And this gives you the indirect object pronouns in Spanish. Now, we all know a pronoun is something that takes the place of maybe a name. For example, if I wanted to say, my friend Bill, right, that would be him. So to replace that, we would use him, and in Spanish, we could just match it up with our chart. It's something we already know how to do. Please put these in your notes, as these will become very handy later. But again, these are your indirect object pronouns. And these are the things that we're going to be placing in our sentence to tell us to whom and for whom is the object. So let's look at some indirect object pronouns in action, some actual Spanish sentences here where we'll use an indirect object pronoun. Now, one very important thing to note before we get into these sentences is that the indirect object pronoun comes before a conjugated verb. So if you're ever not sure, where do I put this indirect object pronoun? It comes before a conjugated verb. Now, let's use a verb that we're already familiar with, something that we've done before in the past, but maybe didn't realize that it was indirect objects that we were talking about. And that's the verb gustar. Gustar. We already know this one, and we've learned it to mean like. But let's look at what this actually means here in our sentence. So the first thing to keep in mind is that gustar has another meaning. That doesn't necessarily mean to like something. It literally means to please. So let's look at our sentence. Keep in mind the indirect object is referring to whom or for whom. So if we look at our sentence here, me gusta la carne de res con papas fritas. We would think of that as, I like the beef with French fries. But let's think of our verb gustar as to please. Now this is going to sound kind of strange, but this will hopefully help you make a little bit more sense of these indirect object pronouns. Me gusta la carne de res con papas fritas. The beef with French fries is pleasing to me. Let's look at that one more time. The beef with French fries is pleasing to me. So our indirect object here is me. And we'd ask the question, to whom is it pleasing? Well, it is pleasing to me. We could also look at this here. In the question, ¿A ustedes les gusta la ropa cómoda? Do you all like comfortable clothing? Well, really, we could say, is comfortable clothing pleasing to you all? So we'll use les as our indirect object pronoun. We want to say, it is pleasing to you all. Again, this is answering the question, to whom or for whom. A mis amigos y yo nos gusta la música rock. Notice our subject here is mis amigos y yo, and we are asking, to whom or for whom is rock music pleasing? And it is pleasing to us. Notice how the nos comes right in front of the gusta, our conjugated verb. And finally, the question, ¿Te gustan los frijoles? We would think of that as, do you like beans? But really, we want to say, are the beans, are they pleasing to you? And notice, the te is our indirect object pronoun here, meaning you. Are they pleasing to you? We're going to look at this in a couple more examples with the idea of giving things to somebody, either as a gift or just in general. And we are going to ask the question, who is receiving these objects? To whom or for whom are these objects? Let's keep going. So if we look at the verb dar, which you all already know means to give, and here are the conjugations for you, doy, das, da, damos, dan. We would ask, maybe, who are you giving something to? So the person doing the action is going to receive the form of the conjugated verb. So if I give something, it would be doy. If you give something, das. He or she gives something, da. If we give something, damos. If they give something, dan. And then to whom or for whom, we already know our indirect object pronouns. So we would ask to whom or for whom is receiving the thing that we are giving. Let's look at a couple of examples, keeping in mind that the indirect object pronoun comes before a conjugated verb. Now, if you already feel comfortable with this idea, pause the video and see if you can write these sentences out down below, these sentences here, in Spanish. See if you can do that and see if you can test yourself. If you don't feel yet comfortable with the idea, listen to me walk you through these sentences and then take a look on the next slide to see how you've done. So in the sentence, the professor gives us an exam. I want you to ask yourself two questions. First, who is giving? That person is going to receive the form of the conjugated verb. You already know how to conjugate a verb, so let's figure out that first. And in this case, you can see clearly that the professor gives. That would be he gives. So we go to our he form of our verb to give. The second question you need to ask yourself is, to whom or for whom is he giving something? Now our direct object, the thing being given, is an exam. To whom or for whom is the exam? And you can see here that that would be us. The exam is for us, or it is being given to us. So we go over here and we know that nos would be used for us. So we would read this as the professor gives us an exam. He gives the exam to us. So we would use this indirect object pronoun. Let's look at our other two examples. My mom never gives me money. Again, who is giving? It's my mom. And who is she giving the money to? Or in this case, not giving the money to. And that would be myself, right? It is not for me. So, my mom never gives me money. We would use the may, and we would use da. And again, we'll look at the answer here in the next slide to help this come full circle. Finally, we give our cousins a board game for Christmas. Who is giving? Well, that's we give. And to whom is the board game being given? And the answer is our cousins. Our cousins. And you have to decide, well, which indirect object pronoun could we use to substitute our cousins? And that would be they, right? It is to or for them. So we would use les here as our indirect object pronoun. Let's look at these in Spanish, and I think it'll make just a little bit more sense. The professor gives us an exam. The professor, he gives the exam, or an exam, to us. Let's see if we can diagram this a little bit. Again, you have to ask yourself two questions. Who's giving the exam? And that would be the professor is giving the exam. That right there is going to help us decide what form of the verb we need to use. He gives. So let's get rid of that here for just a moment. The next question you need to ask is to whom or for whom is the object? And remember, the object is for us, so we decided that we are going to use nos. So he gives us the exam. Let's look at our other sentences. My mom never gives me money. Well, who's doing the giving? It's my mom. So my mom, she gives, or in this case, never gives. And then to whom is the money, or for whom is the money? And it is for me. So we would use may. So we would say overall that she gives the money to me, or in this case, does not give the money to me. Our last sentence. We give our cousins a board game for Christmas. Who's doing the action? Well, that's we in this case. We give, right? So nosotros damos. And to whom or for whom is the board game? Well, it is for our cousins, a nuestros primos. It's for our cousins. So we know it's them. So in this case, we are going to use the indirect object pronoun les, since it is for them. Now here's another tiny note that you're going to want to include in your notes here, and it's something that's very important. You may be thinking, well, if we know the les means for them, why do I need this? Why do we need the a nuestros primos? This helps us clarify to whom or for whom the object is being given. We learned before about the personal a, and that if something is being given or done to that person, and it is a person, then we need to use the a. But this a nuestros primos helps us clarify to whom or for whom it is given. You might ask yourself, do I have to include this? The answer is no, you do not have to. However, if you are ever unsure of to whom or for whom the object is being given, this will help you clarify. So it never hurts to include it. So if we wanted to include it in our first example, how would we do that? El profesor nos da un examen. Well, we would just simply add a nosotros. The professor gives an exam to us. El profesor nos da un examen a nosotros. Just simply emphasizes the nos. Let's move on and see if you can do some of these on your own. Escribe las oraciones en español. Write the sentences in Spanish. This is where you're going to pause the video, and somewhere on your notes paper here, I want you to write numbers 1 through 6, and I want you to write these out in Spanish, keeping in mind, of course, that the indirect object pronoun comes before a conjugated verb. Ask yourself the two questions. Who is doing the action? And to whom or for whom is the thing being given? Use the verbs dar, regalar, buscar, and quedar to help you with these sentences. Keep in mind your indirect object pronouns, me, te, le, nos, and les, and see if you can put the sentences in the correct order here. Don't be afraid to go back and check and see if you need some extra help. Refer to your notes, and then check your answers here on the next slide. But again, pause the video and try these on your own. So here are your answers, las respuestas. We'll go through 2 of these together, and then at that point, if you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me, and we can see if we can straighten this out further. Let's look at number 2. She gives me socks as a gift for my birthday. Another great present, right? She gives me socks as a gift for my birthday. Número 2. The first question is, who is giving as a gift? And it is ella, she is. So we conjugate our form of regalar in the she form. To whom or for whom are the socks? They are for me. So my indirect object pronoun is me. Notice how it comes before the form of regalar. Let's also look at number 5, using the verb quedar. The shirt fits you well. La camisa te queda bien. The question first is, who or what is doing the fitting? And in this case, it's the shirt. The shirt is doing the fitting. La camisa. So we are going to conjugate quedar in the it form. And then to whom or for whom is it fitting? Well, it is fitting you well. So we would use the te as our indirect object pronoun. La camisa te queda bien. The te comes before queda, like we've learned here. If you have any other questions on any of these other examples or any questions in general about indirect object pronouns, please let me know. Y que tengas mucha suerte. Adiós.